What's going on, everybody? Gareth Foley here with FCP Euro, joined by
Alex Nelson. How's it going?
And today we're going to be installing this eVenturi cold air intake on this F30 328i on the lift behind us. So a little bit of a different format here today. We are going to be installing this eVenturi cold air intake on the F30 328i.
Yep.
But I have Alex here, who is an engineer, and he's might have designed a thing or two involving intaking air into an engine. So I thought it'd be a really good idea to have him in the video to explain some of the engineering choices on the eVenturi cold air intake compared to some of the stock components and why this could be beneficial. Aside from the fact that this kit looks phenomenal and all the eVenturi products look phenomenal, we're gonna get a lot more sound out of this, a little bit better airflow.
Yep.
And Alex is going to be the one to describe all that because I don't know anything about that. I just know how to install parts.
I think there's the obvious differences when you look at it, right? Like it's a lot smoother and it's certainly a lot better looking than the factory intake. But yeah, we'll get the stock one off the car and then we'll compare the differences between the two. We're going to take a quick look at the differences between this gorgeous eVenturi system and what Gareth just pulled off, which is the stock N20 intake. The first thing we're going to take a look at is this, what's most immediate to the turbo, the inlet tube. This guy's a little bit more complex than it may look. BMW certainly spent millions of euros, probably hundreds of thousands of euros, making this totally silent when you step on the gas, and the inside of it looks totally crazy. You can see that it has basically a array of different size holes and pockets to reflect a specific frequency, so that way you don't hear those wonderful turbo noises. On the eVenturi side, we have a beautiful, what I can only assume is a bagged and maybe even pre-preg carbon fiber inlet pipe. It's also a MAF tube, so it's all in one, unlike the factory system where you have a coupler. This is going to sound completely insane compared to the stock system, and also this large radius here, it might look a little bit like a candy cane made out of carbon fiber. This is specifically to keep air from separating off the inner wall of the tube. You have high-speed air on the outside, low-speed air on the inside, and to keep them from getting in an argument with each other, this large radius is going to help a lot with that. It'll also help your MAF readings stay consistent at low airspeed. The most obvious part on this table is probably this guy, which is this enormous piece of plastic. This is the OEM N20 airbox lid. So this goes over top the filter, it clamshells like that. And you might be wondering what's on this side. This is actually a resonant chamber. So there's pressure waves coming back out of your intake and they're reflecting off of this filter or reflecting off of any pockets they can find. The job of this guy is to cancel those out. And in this case, that means canceling out any of the sweet 80s sounding 4-cylinder induction noise, and we want that back. I can't think of a much more dramatic difference in airboxes between this guy and the eVenturi one, because the eVenturi one involves no dampers, it's maximum flow, and it's going to sound glorious through what I can imagine is probably 2 millimeters of carbon fiber. So we're going to get rid of this thing. Let's talk about the new eVenturi parts. This is the entire airbox. This replaces everything we just saw. It doesn't have any of those dampers or resonance chambers, and it's gorgeous. If you don't know anything about eVenturi's filter design, it's a patented system that prevents air from having to make unnecessary 90-degree turns throughout the intake tract. This is not only good for power, but in this case, the packaging can be really nice and tight. This means there's more room in the engine bay and more airflow and less heat soak. The contours of this are very Bilal. I've worked with him on an intake before for eVenturi, and he's one of the most detail-oriented people I've ever had the pleasure of working with. He tries to make sure that there aren't any abrupt edges or sharp angles that airflow can get disconnected from, and it's absolutely gorgeous to look at. He also does some trick build quality items like having these anti-vibration nuts in here that are metal, not just Nylock screws or Loctite. So those will last the lifetime of the intake, and the build quality of it is just incredible. I think this is going to sound completely different from the airbox we just took off, and I would struggle, I think, to find another airbox that's going to make this dramatic of a difference from the N20 system. At the very end, we have, or I should say at the very front, we have this air scoop here. This is going to replace the AFE system that we actually had in the car. Nothing really against AFE. This is just a slightly more polished and complete scoop. It goes a little bit further into the grill, so in theory it'll catch more of that cold air out the front of the car and deflect it into the intake. The factory scoop system on BMWs has been getting better and better and better, and now we're at the point where B58 even can make 600 or 700 horsepower with a stock intake. So this isn't necessarily the most important thing, but I bet you this will do some good work for sound.
Excellent. So with that said, let's talk about some of the tools we're going to do this job, and then we'll go ahead and jump right into it. So tools to remove the factory intake and then install the e-venturi intake, very simple array. 6mm, 7mm hose clamp driver, of course. You could use a flathead screwdriver or the same size sockets on a ratchet or extension, totally up to you. Also, totally depends on what tools you have. I always like these little pry bars for removing connectors, things like that. You'll need a 10mm wrench and 10mm socket, a T20 torque socket for the mass airflow sensor, 1/4 inch ratchet, a multi-angled pick tool like this, super useful. In this case, we'll be using it to remove the kidney grill. And then I'm also using one of these little pop rivet pliers just because I already have an AFE scoop on this car that needs to come off, and they use one of those little pop rivets. So depending on the modifications or no modifications to your car, you may not need this, but useful to have in your toolbox because plastic rivets are used for a lot of things. So that said, these are the tools you need to do the job. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's get it done. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is remove the factory air box, which on your N20 cars is this giant plastic box in front of the engine. All we have is our hood release cable that sits across the air box here. So I'll just kind of unhook that from the clips. We're going to disconnect our mass airflow sensor, which we just depress the tab and pull the connector out. We do need to transfer our mass airflow sensor to the e-venturi part, but that's no big deal. And then we have a 6mm hose clamp that secures the airbox to one of the inlet pipes. So we're just going to loosen that up. And now that that's loose, we can pull our airbox out. Now, when we built this car a couple months back, there weren't really any aftermarket intakes I was looking at that I wanted to put on this car. And the e-venturi intake had been discontinued at that time, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So super excited to see that it became available again, because now we get to replace this giant box with a nice carbon piece that's going to look really sick and it's going to sound awesome and probably going to get a little extra horsepower out of it too. Next up, we have this inlet muffler. That's the only thing I could describe. Most of your induction noise is basically eliminated by this piece. Before you go ahead and rip it out, you do have a support for one of the coolant hoses. This is the expansion tank hose. We need to release that. So I'm going to open up this clip. There's a little tab on the side, and you kind of just do that and it folds open. It clips together. It's pretty simple. And now, because BMW likes to throw you for the loop, it's a 7mm hose clamp. Of course, a flathead screwdriver will work just fine if you so choose to do that. We're going to loosen that clamp, and we're going to pull this secondary part of the intake out, which is basically one giant muffler. So the next thing we need to do is take off the right side kidney grill. We have a really in-depth video about how to replace kidney grills on F30s. All we're going to do is go in with an angled pick, reach in behind on the locks, lift them, and pull the grill forward. So we're going to pull off the AFE scoop. Like I said, this was installed when we put the car together originally. It's secured with a clip right here towards the front. Just going to pull that clip out, which loosens up the scoop. And then we have this this grill that kind of sits on the inside of the scoop. We need to kind of pull that off in order to get the scoop to come out from that air duct. So it's kind of a rubber piece, so it just sort of stretches around the entire thing. That is the factory, call it like a debris guard. Just make sure that larger pieces of stuff don't end up going in the airbox. So pull that off. And then once that's out of the way, we can just pull the AFE scoop out, like so. Alrighty, so I'm gonna put this fresh air scoop grill back on. I had to take it off to get the AFE scoop out. Just kind of clicks into place, and the rubber goes around it, so pretty straightforward. And now we have the scoop from the eVenturi kit. Has this little clip here on the back that's actually going to hook on to this little cross brace here in the front. So what I need to do is get this in just right, angle the hook, and get it to click in like so. At this point, we'll just go ahead and put the kidney grill back on, which is literally as simple as just a couple of gentle taps and we're in. And now we have the nice carbon scoop back there. Looks pretty cool. So next up, we need to go back to the factory airbox cover. We need to remove our mass airflow sensor. We're going to be reusing this. It's held in by T20 screws, so fortunately not tamper-proof or anything silly like that, just normal T20 screws because, well, it has to be somewhat serviceable. One time you see tamper-proof screws used on mass airflow sensors is when the sensor is part of a housing, but you're forced to buy the whole housing. So it's not the case here. Let's just pull this out. There's our mass airflow sensor. The only thing I'm going to say, there is an arrow for airflow. So this is facing up. Airflow is going to be going that way. So when we put it on the new tube, we're going to make sure that it lines up the same way. And along with the attention to detail, eVenturi actually gives you some nice new stainless screws that are not going to rust or look junky afterwards on their little connector here. So we're going to take these screws out, same T20. And so when we're looking at this, this is the upper part of the tube, arrow pointing downward, mass airflow needs to go in like that. I just put a little bit of silicone lube on the sealing surface of the mass airflow sensor, just a little bit of a rubber gasket. Once I put that silicone lube on there, slipped right in. It's just getting bound up a little bit. So you notice on the intake tube here, we have this little bump or notch. That is going to line up with the notch on the turbocharger inlet. So it's just going to go into the same location. And I'm not going to tighten anything down quite yet. I'm going to slightly tighten down this so it holds it in place, but we want to have a little bit of wiggle room because once we install the upper portion of the intake, we need just a little bit of room for adjustment. So just going to go ahead and tighten that down a little bit. So the stock clamp is a 7mm drive, or you could use a flathead or slotted screwdriver. Like I said, I'm just tightening this clamp down a little bit. That's just to kind of hold this in place. From your factory airbox, you will need one of these grommets. I'm going to slip it onto the bracket that's already there. We're going to take our really nice silicone coupler that's included with the eVenturi kit, slip it on to this pipe here. Don't worry about tightening the clamps yet. We'll do that in a minute. And from here, we have some hardware. On the frame rail, you'll see that there's two holes kind of notched in the frame rail. This hardware is going to come through the side and it's going to hook up to this support bracket here. We're going to take our intake, we're going to slip it down into position. We'll show you what this looks like here in a moment. Got a couple coolant hoses you need to get this thing kind of by first. So the bracket that's connected to the intake, that is what is supported on the frame rail, and I'm just getting the hardware in there. Once I get it in location, we will show you what that looks like. It's just, there's not a lot of room down there to both film and manipulate my hands, but I want to show you what that looks like. So we got it in there. If you look, that bracket is supported here on the frame rail. The inlet of our eVenturi intake sits on the factory pipe. That's what normally the airbox would connect to. And then we have this whole crazy pipe where it's just one continual smooth transition of air. Like what Alex said, the objective is to remove 90-degree turns, which the factory intake, technically, without a front scoop, has 3 90-degree turns. And air does not like to turn 90 degrees. So this will be a nice smooth transition into the turbo inlet. Before we get too far down the road here, I just want to plug in our mass airflow sensor, like so. And kind of have everything positioned where we need it. So I'm going to go ahead and start tightening down some clamps. And I always like to make sure the clamps are evenly sitting on any kind of silicone coupler or anything like that. Like, you need to have enough room for them to actually bite onto it. You don't want like part of the clamp hanging off the side or have it be angled, because sometimes these things have a tendency to shift around. The coupler itself, you know, the silicone can change, and you know, I want to make sure it has a nice proper bite. I'm using a 7mm hose clamp driver for this part right here. Seems to be the right size. And this is carbon, so we don't need to go insane in terms of tightening it. We just need to make sure it's tight, and these hose clamp drivers are great for that, because you will feel when the clamp is bottomed out. That's a really nice touch. You know, eVenturi, they include these clips for the hood release cable, which just repositions it towards the front, which is very useful, because normally these would be connected to your factory airbox, which obviously is no longer there. The only thing we have to do at this point is tighten down our hardware over here on the side. I believe those are 10mm. Done.
It looks amazing. It didn't take you very long to install.
No.
Probably like, what, half hour?
Nah, like 15 minutes to put this in, and maybe 10 minutes to take the factory stuff out.
Yeah.
You know, maybe fiddle around with the grill a little bit trying to get that out, because you obviously don't want to break that. But
Right.
you know, putting it all back in. I mean, listen, I've installed a lot of different eVenturi parts. Every single part I've ever installed in any car fits correctly the first time around. Doesn't require fiddling. Things line up.
Right.
That's kind of what you just come to expect.
It's OEM fitment, OEM plus
Yeah.
fitment.
No, it's well thought out, and you know, you just feel the parts and you look at them and you know it's high quality, and you're not sitting there like, oh great, I'm gonna have to modify something. But either way, it looks awesome.
Yeah, it fits up to the OEM stuff perfectly.
It actually looks freaking wild, just compared to what was in here, just a giant plastic slab, and now you kind of have this carbon fiber tube. You know, you have the
it's demonstrative.
Venturi'd setup here in the front, like, because you know, obviously the whole, you know, it uses the Venturi effect, but I'm just saying, like, you know, the filter housing, the way it hooks up to the factory parts, the snorkel up front or the scoop up front, it's just, you know, everything
awesome.
everything has a purpose.
Yeah, it looks like now if you had a carbon fiber engine cover or a slam panel that was carbon, it would actually complement the intake. Before, it was just like this big plastic Tupperware bin in the front, and now it's this. So I'm excited to see how it sounds. Should we fire it up and listen to some turbo sounds?
Yep.
Let's do it.
Let it rip.
Dude, you hear it from the grill. Hold this in front of the grill. That was sick, dude. So I'd say that went pretty well. And it sounds sweet, and it looks cool, and it's a lot better than this garbage.
You know what?
Sorry.
He said it best. That's it. That's the end of the video.
End of video. So
thanks for watching.
Really, I think that, you know, we both felt it in the car. It definitely had a notable performance gain. I think whether the torque modeling ECU knows it or not, a less restricted turbo is going to perform better. It sounds really cool too.
It sounds cool. I mean, it looks. The setup on this car is interesting just because of how the factory airbox is positioned, where the air intake is, and then what needs to be done to make for a smooth airflow to the turbo.
Yeah.
So you look at it and you're like, it just looks crazy, but it also makes total sense, and the way that you explained it makes it make sense. So at the end of it, it was a very simple, straightforward install. There's not that much to it. Definitely something we've done at home in the driveway. It's super simple, and the final result is you pop the hood, it looks cool. You drive the car, it sounds cool. And you definitely do feel some kind of difference. So with that said, thank you so much, I&D. Thank you so much, eVenturi. Really glad we were able to do this video today, and also throw a little bit of extra into the Project F3328SI.
Yep.
And with that said, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, leave in the comment box below. If you liked the video, of course, hit that like button. And you want to hit subscribe. We have a lot more videos on the way. And as always, we'll see you for the next one. Thanks for watching.
Good stuff.